Hey guys, tonight we plunge into the flickering torchlight of medieval Egypt, where the air smells of myrrh and mystery, and every step you take echoes with the weight of eternity. Picture yourself standing at the mouth of a sandstone tomb, the desert heat pressing against your skin, hieroglyphs whispering secrets into the dusk. The Egyptians you're about to meet didn't just live. They obsessed over what comes next, crafting their entire world around the afterlife. Spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this journey without questioning your own mortality at least once. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I'm curious where you're drifting off from tonight. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing in the heart of medieval Egypt, not the pyramids' heyday, but the vibrant Middle Kingdom, and beyond roughly 2000 to 1000 BCE, where the afterlife wasn't just a hope, it was a plan. The Nile's muddy banks cradle villages where every mud brick house, every woven basket hums with a purpose tied to the next world. You notice a farmer pausing his work, glancing at the setting sun, muttering a prayer to Osiris. Why? Because death wasn't an end, here it was a gate. Mainstream history tells us Egyptians believed the soul, or call, needed a preserved body and provisions to thrive in the afterlife. Tombs weren't graves. They were launch pads for eternity. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some Egyptians slathered crocodile dung on their faces as sunscreen, thinking it pleased the gods who'd judge them later. Gross right. Historians still argue whether this obsession stemmed from fear of oblivion or an unshakable faith in cosmic order. You're about to find out. Step closer to the tomb's entrance. The air cools, and the scent of incense thickens. You're not just visiting a burial site. You're entering a culture that wove death into life's every thread. The Egyptians didn't fear death. They prepared for it, like you'd pack for a trip you're never coming back from. Every tool, every ritual, every whispered spell was a ticket to the field of reeds, their paradise where crops grow taller than a man and rivers never dry. You see a scribe carving hieroglyphs, his reed pen trembling with purpose. He's not just writing. He's ensuring someone's name lives forever. Names mattered, here lose your name, and your soul might wander lost like a Wi-Fi signal with no bars. Imagine that, an eternity of buffering. You walk deeper, and the walls pulse with color scenes of God's boats and starry skies. These aren't decorations, they're instructions. The Egyptians believed the afterlife was a treacherous journey, a cosmic obstacle course where your soul faced monsters, gates, and divine judges. You'd need spells, amulets, even a cheat sheet carved into your coffin. And yeah, they took this seriously, way more than you take your morning coffee order. One wrong move, and your soul could be devoured by Amit, a lion-hippo-crocodile mashup that makes your worst nightmare look cuddly. Joking aside, who needs a horror movie when you've got a deity like that waiting to snack on your heart? But why this fixation? You pause, running your fingers over a carved ankh, the symbol of life that's ironically everywhere in these tombs. The Egyptians saw life and death as a loop, not a line. Your earthly existence was just Act 1. The afterlife was the main event. They built their society around this pharaoh's farmers. Even kids learned early that every action tipped the scales for Judgment Day. You spot a child's toy boat buried with its owner, meant to sail the cosmic Nile. It's cute but eerie, like finding a kid's backpack in a haunted house. This wasn't blind faith. It was a system. Taxes funded temples. Temples funded priests, and priests promised eternity. Sounds like a deal until you realize the fine print involved your heart being weighed against a feather. You're starting to feel the weight of this place, not just the stone, but the ideas. The Egyptians didn't just believe in the afterlife, they engineered it. Every ritual, every preserved organ was a step in a cosmic blueprint. And yet there's a human side to this. You imagine a widow weeping as she places a loaf of bread in her husband's tomb, hoping he'll eat in eternity. It's not just religion. It's love, fear, and a stubborn refusal to let go. You're hooked now, aren't you good? Because this tomb is just the start. The gods are waiting, and they've got stories that'll make your modern heart skip a beat. The torch in your hand flickers, casting shadows that dance like spirits on the tomb's walls. You're not done yet. There's a whole pantheon of gods up ahead, and they're the ones who fueled this afterlife obsession. Let's keep moving. You step deeper into the tomb, the air growing heavier with the scent of ancient resin, and the walls seem to hum with unseen voices. The flickering torchlight reveals carvings of gods, stern faces, animal heads, eyes that follow you like they know your secrets. You're about to meet the divine heavyweights of medieval Egypt, the ones who made the afterlife an obsession that gripped every heart from pharaoh to farmer. These gods didn't just sit on clouds. They were the architects of eternity, promising a forever that you better prepare for now. Let's dive into their world, where every prayer, every offering was a handshake with the divine. You're standing before Osiris, lord of the underworld, his green skin glowing like a jade statue in the dim light. Hes, the poster boy for the afterlife, the god who died and came back, giving every Egyptian a reason to believe they could pull off the same trick. Mainstream history tells us Osiris was central to medieval Egyptian religion. By the Middle Kingdom, around 2000 BCE, his cult was a cultural juggernaut, promising resurrection to anyone who followed the rules. You can almost hear the priests chanting his name, their voices echoing through temples along the Nile. But here's a quirky tidbit: some Egyptians believed Osiris' body parts were scattered across Egypt, and local shrines claimed to house his, let's say, unmentionables. Yeah, they built whole cults around that. Historians still argue whether these shrines were symbolic, or if people genuinely thought they had a piece of the gods' divine anatomy. You glance at the carvings, and there's Isis Osiris, wife, her wings spread like she's about to take flight. She's the ultimate multitasker goddess of magic motherhood, and piecing her husband back together after his brother Set chopped him up. You can't help but smirk. Imagine the family drama at that divine reunion. Isis was the one you'd pray to if your afterlife prep went sideways. Her spells could fix anything, even a botched mummification. You picture a nervous scribe whispering her name while double-checking a tomb's inventory. No pressure, but mess up, and someone's eternity is on hold. Next up is Anubis, the jackal-headed god, who's basically the underworld's bouncer. You feel a chill as his carved eyes lock onto yours. Hes, the one who guides your soul through the afterlife's first steps, weighing your heart to see if you're worthy. You can almost smell the incense burning at his shrines, where embalmers worked under his watchful gaze. The Egyptians didn't just respect Anubis. They needed him. Without his approval, you're not getting past the underworld's velvet rope. And speaking of weird, some embalmers wore jackal masks during mummification, channeling Anubis, like it's a cosmic cosplay convention. You try not to laugh. Imagine applying for that job. You notice other gods etched into the stone Horus, the falcon-eyed protector. Mot, goddess of truth, her feather, the ultimate test of your soul's worth. These deities weren't distant. They were in your face, part of every ritual, every decision. You're starting to get why the Egyptians were so obsessed. The afterlife wasn't some vague hope. It was a deal brokered with these gods. Live right, honor them, and you'd sail through to paradise. Screw it up, and you're lunch for a monster with a crocodile's head. No wonder people spent their lives prepping eternities a long time to regret a bad choice. You pause, running your fingers over a carving of Osiris holding a crook and flail. It's not just art, it's a contract. The Egyptians believed these gods judged you based on your actions, but they weren't unfair. You could tip the scales with offerings, bread, beer, even a carved scarab or two. You smirk at the thought, it's like bribing the universe with snacks. But it worked. Temples overflowed with gifts, and priests grew fat on the proceeds. The gods didn't eat the food. Of course, your call did that spiritual double that needed feeding to survive the afterlife. You imagine forgetting to pack a sandwich for your soul. Rookie move. The deeper you go, the more you feel the gods' presence, like they're watching you right now. You hear a faint drip of water, maybe from an underground spring, and it feels like the Nile itself is whispering their names. These gods weren't just stories. They were the scaffolding of a society that built its entire existence around the afterlife. You see a painted scene of a soul kneeling before Osiris, and it hits you this wasn't blind faith. It was a system, a cosmic bureaucracy where every prayer was a form filed in triplicate. Historians debate whether the average Egyptian truly believed every myth or just played along to hedge their bets. Either way, you're starting to respect the hustle. You're not just in a tomb anymore. You're in a world where gods walked among mortals, where every action was a step toward eternity. You feel a pang of envy. Imagine living with that kind of certainty, knowing exactly what's waiting on the other side. Or maybe it's not certainty, but fear, the kind that keeps you up at night, wondering if you've done enough. You chuckle softly, sounds like modern anxiety, just with better statues. The gods have set the stage, but the real work starts with the body. How do you prep for forever? Let's find out. The torchlight dims as you move deeper, the air now thick with the scent of natron and linen. The gods are behind you, but their promises linger, urging you toward the next step in this eternal blueprint. You're about to see how the Egyptians turned their bodies into vessels for immortality, a process as gruesome as it is genius. Keep walking. The mummies are waiting. You're deeper in the tomb, now the air sharp with the salty tang of natron, a mineral that clings to your nostrils like a memory of the sea. The walls are tighter, the torchlight casting jagged shadows that make you double-check for lurking jackals. You're about to witness the heart of medieval Egypt's afterlife obsession, mummification, the art of turning a body into a vessel for eternity. This wasn't just science, it was a sacred pact, a way to cheat decay and deliver you to Osiris's doorstep. Every bandage, every incision was a love letter to the afterlife. Let's unwrap this process, layer by layer, and see why the Egyptians went to such lengths to preserve their dead. You crouch beside a stone slab where embalmers worked their magic, their tools glinting in the flickering light. Mainstream history tells us mummification peaked in the Middle Kingdom around 2100 BCE, with techniques so precise they'd make a modern surgeon jealous. The goal: keep your body intact So your that spiritual twin had a home in the afterlife. You picture the process first. They'd remove your brain through your nose with a hooked rod. Sounds like a bad day at the spa, right? But they didn't stop there. Your organs, liver, lungs, stomach, intestines were carefully extracted, preserved in canopic jars, guarded by four gods. Your heart, though, stayed put. That's the star of the show, the part Anubis would weigh against Mot's feather. You run your fingers along a nearby jar, its lid carved like a falcon's head Horus' son, Kebesenuef, guarding your intestines. Quirky tidbit: some embalmers used palm wine to rinse the body's cavities, like they were prepping you for a cosmic happy hour. You can't help but imagine the smell of fermented fruit mingling with natron dust. The body was then packed with natron for 70 days, drying it out until you were less human, more jerky. Wrapped in linen smeared with resin, you'd emerge as a mummy, ready to ride out eternity. This wasn't cheaply. The elite could afford the full package, but even farmers got a budget version, because who wants to show up to the afterlife looking like a clearance rack reject? You notice the linen strips, some inscribed with spells, wound so tightly they look like they're hugging the soul inside. These bandages weren't just practical. They were symbolic, binding your ka to your body like a cosmic seatbelt. You imagine the embalmers chanting, their voices low and rhythmic, invoking Anubis to guide their hands. Historians still argue whether mummification was purely religious or partly a flex of wealth and status. Did the poor resent the rich for their fancier mummies, or was the whole society united in this death-defying dream? You're not sure, but you feel the weight of it, the hope, the fear, the sheer effort to outsmart time. You step back, and the slab feels colder now, like it's holding on to the chill of 1,000 bodies. The process wasn't just about preservation. It was about transformation. You weren't just a corpse, you were a bridge to the divine. The Egyptians believed your body had to be recognizable in the afterlife, or your ka would wander homeless like a ghost locked out of its own house. You smirk at the thought. Imagine your soul knocking on Osiris' door, only to be told, "Sorry, pal, you're too decayed to enter." That's why they went all in, stuffing bodies with sawdust or linen to keep that human shape. It's oddly touching, like they were sculpting you a VIP pass to eternity. But it wasn't all solemn. You spot a small amulet tucked into the linen, a scarab symbol of rebirth, its tiny wings carved with obsessive detail. Some embalmers slipped in extra charms like good luck trinkets, hoping to sweet-talk the gods. You can't help but chuckle, imagine bribing Anubis with a shiny beetle. The whole process feels like a mix of faith and overkill, like packing a suitcase with every outfit you own, just in case the afterlife has a dress code. And yet it worked. Mummies from this era still lie in museums, their faces frozen in a silent plea for eternity. You wonder what they'd think, seeing their bodies gawked at by tourists instead of sailing the cosmic Nile. You're starting to get it now. The mummification wasn't just a ritual, it was a mindset. Every cut, every wrap was a bet on forever. You imagine a family watching their loved ones, body being prepared, torn between grief and hope. They're not just burying someone, they're launching them into a new world. The tomb around you feels less like a grave and more like a rocket ship built to blast through death itself. And the embalmers, they're the engineers, making sure every detail is perfect. You're impressed, maybe a little creeped out, but definitely hooked. The body's ready, but where's it going? Let's find out what kind of home they built for these eternal travelers. The torch sputters, casting a warm glow on the walls, where hieroglyphs tell stories of journeys beyond death. You're leaving the embalmer's slab behind, but the scent of resin lingers, a reminder of the body's transformation. Now you're stepping into the tomb itself, not just a resting place, but a time machine designed to carry its occupant to the stars. Keep moving. The next chamber is waiting, and it's packed with secrets. The torchlight dims as you move deeper, the air now thick with the scent of natron and linen. The gods are behind you, but their promises linger, urging you toward the next step in this eternal blueprint. You're about to see how the Egyptians turned their bodies into vessels for immortality, a process as gruesome as it is genius. Keep walking, the mummies are waiting. But now you're stepping into a new chamber where the walls themselves seem to pulse with purpose. These aren't just tombs. They're time machines built to catapult souls into the afterlife. You're surrounded by stone and secrets, each carved symbol a ticket to eternity. Let's explore how medieval Egyptians designed these sacred spaces to ensure their dead didn't just rest, they traveled. You pause at the threshold, the air cool and heavy, like the inside of a forgotten cave. The chamber stretches before you, its walls painted with scenes of starry skies and golden fields. Mainstream history tells us that by the Middle Kingdom, around 2700 BCE, Egyptian tombs evolved from simple pits to elaborate complexes, especially for the elite. These weren't just graves. They were cosmic launch pads designed to align with the stars and guide the soul to the field of reeds, a paradise where the Nile never dried. You notice a shaft in the ceiling, angled precisely toward the northern sky. That's no accident. It's aimed at the circumpolar stars, the imperishable ones that never set, believed to house the gods. You smirk. Imagine building your grave with GPS-level precision just to impress Osiris. The walls are alive with color, every inch painted or carved with purpose. You see boats sailing across celestial rivers, gods offering unks, and the deceased standing tall, ready for eternity. These images weren't decor. They were instructions, a roadmap for the soul. You trace a hieroglyph with your finger, feeling the grooves of a language that's half prayer, half spell. The Egyptians believed the afterlife was a journey through a treacherous underworld filled with gates, demons, and rivers of fire. Your tomb was your vehicle, packed with everything you'd need: food, furniture, even tiny servant statues, called ushabti, to do your chores in paradise. Quirky tidbit. Some tombs included model boats, complete with miniature oarsmen, because who wants to paddle their own canoe for eternity? You chuckle talk about first-class travel. You step toward a false door carved into the wall, a portal for the Ka to slip in and out. It's not a real door, but it's treated like one, with offerings of bread and beer painted around it. You can almost smell the yeast, though it's been centuries. The Egyptians believed your Ka needed to eat, drink, and move freely, so they built these tombs like five-star hotels for the soul. The wealthier you were, the fancier your tomb pharaohs got sprawling complexes like those at Thebes, while regular folks settled for simpler chambers. But even the humblest tomb had a purpose: keep the body safe, the soul fed, and the name alive. Lose any of those, and you're stuck in cosmic limbo, like forgetting your password to the afterlife. You notice a small alcove packed with good spottery jewelry, even a board game for those long, eternal afternoons. It's oddly relatable, like packing your favorite snacks for a road trip. But there's a catch. These tombs were prime targets for robbers. Historians still argue whether the elaborate designs were purely spiritual or partly a status symbol to flex on the living. Why else hide your tomb in the Valley of the Kings, only to fill it with gold that screams, "Rob me." You grin at the irony, spending a fortune to secure your afterlife only for some ancient bandit to swipe your stuff. Still, the Egyptians kept building undeterred because the stakes were too high to skimp. You kneel beside a sarcophagus, its stone surface cool under your palms. It's not just a coffin, it's a fortress, often nested inside multiple layers like a Russian doll. The outer layers might be granite, the inner ones, wood painted with eyes so the mummy could see the afterlife. You imagine the craftsmen chiseling away, knowing their work had to last forever. It's humbling, but also a little absurd, like designing a spaceship for a journey no one's confirmed. And yet the precision is staggering. Some tombs were aligned to catch the sun's rays on specific days, bathing the mummy in light like a divine spotlight. You can't help but joke if your Airbnb had this kind of attention to detail, you'd leave a 5-star review. The deeper you go, the more you feel the tomb's purpose. It's not about death, it's about continuity. The Egyptians saw life as a loop, and the tomb was the pivot point. You spot a carved lotus flower symbol of rebirth, and it hits you. Every detail. Here is a bet on resurrection. The K needed a home, the soul needed a map, and the body needed to stay intact. You wonder what it was like to plan your own tomb, picking out the perfect spells and statues. Did they lie awake at night, worrying they'd forgotten something crucial, like leaving your phone charger behind for eternity? It's a lot of pressure, but also a kind of hope, a belief that you could engineer your way to forever. You're starting to see the tomb not as a grave, but as a machine humming with intent. The air feels charged, like you're standing in a place where time bends. The Egyptians didn't just bury their dead. They sent them on a journey, armed with everything they'd need to thrive. You're impressed? Maybe a little spooked, but definitely curious about what comes next. The tomb is ready, but how do you navigate the afterlife's dangers? Let's find out what spells they use to cheat death itself. The torch flickers, casting long shadows that twist like spirits across the painted walls. You're leaving the tomb's chamber behind, but its purpose lingers, a machine built to defy time. Now you're about to uncover the spells that powered this journey, words so potent they could outsmart death. Keep moving. The next chamber holds the secrets of the written word, etched for eternity. The torch flickers, casting long shadows that twist like spirits across the painted walls. You're leaving the tomb's chamber behind, but its purpose lingers, a machine built to defy time. Now you're about to uncover the spells that powered this journey, words so potent they could outsmart death. Keep moving. The next chamber holds the secrets of the written word, etched for eternity. You're stepping into a world where papyrus and stone carried the weight of immortality, where every syllable was a shield against oblivion. The Egyptians didn't just pray for the afterlife, they scripted it with spells that could charm gods or banish demons. Let's unroll these ancient texts and see how they cheated death. You're standing before a wall covered in hieroglyphs, their sharp lines glowing faintly under your torch. The air smells faintly of dust and old reeds, like a library forgotten by time. These are no ordinary writings. They're spells from the coffin, texts the Middle Kingdom's guidebook to the afterlife, used around 2500 BCE. Mainstream history tells us these texts evolved from the earlier pyramid texts, but they were more democratic, not just for pharaohs, but for anyone who could afford a coffin. You trace a spell with your finger, one meant to transform you into a falcon, to soar past underworld dangers. It's like having a cheat code for eternity, except instead of extra lives, you get a shot at paradise. You imagine a scribe hunched over papyrus, his reed pen scratching out these words with the focus of a bomb diffuser. The coffin text and later the Book of the Dead we're packed with spells for every afterlife scenario, passing through gates, dodging serpents, even convincing gods you're one of them. One spell lets you turn into a lotus flower to bloom in the field of reeds. Quirky tidbits, some spells were so specific they included instructions for not eating your own excrement in the underworld. You chuckle imagine needing a spell to remind you of basic hygiene. But it makes sense. The afterlife was a wild place, and you needed all the help you could get. You kneel beside a wooden coffin, its surface painted with spells in black ink. These aren't just words. They're magic believed to activate the moment they're read aloud. You can almost hear a priest's voice, low and rhythmic, reciting a spell to open the gates of the underworld. The Egyptians thought words had power, say the right ones, and you could bend reality. You picture yourself memorizing these spells, hoping you don't flub the lines when facing a demon with a name like He Who Swallows Souls. It's like prepping for the worst job interview ever, except the stakes are your eternal existence. The spells weren't just for navigation. They were for transformation. You spot one that promises to make you a star in the sky shining beside Osiris. Its poetic, but also practical stars were eternal, and who wouldn't want to be one? The Egyptians believed the afterlife required you to shapeshift, dodge traps, and sweet-talk gods. One spell even lets you borrow Isis's magic to fend off enemies. You grin imagine having a goddess on speed dial. But here's where it gets debated. Historians still argue whether these spells were literal instructions or symbolic hopes. Did people really think they'd turn into falcons? Or was it a metaphor for spiritual freedom? You're not sure, but the effort put into these texts feels like a bet on the literal. You move to a papyrus scroll, tucked into a niche, its edges frayed, but its ink still bold. This is a Book of the Dead fragment customized for its owner, with spells tailored to their fears and dreams. You see a line about sailing the celestial Nile, and it hits you. These spells were like a cosmic GPS guiding you through a maze of gods and monsters. The Egyptians didn't trust luck. They trusted preparation. Every spell was a tool, like a Swiss Army knife for the soul. You can't help but joke if you forgot a spell. Would you be stuck in the underworld's waiting room, filling out forms for eternity? The chamber feels alive now, the spells humming with intent. You imagine the deceased, their caw hovering nearby, relying on these words to make it through. It's not just about survival, it's about thriving. One spell promises you a villa in the field of reeds, complete with eternal harvests. You smirk, sounds like the ultimate retirement plan, minus the paperwork. But the effort wasn't cheap. Scribes were pricey, and papyrus wasn't exactly dollar store material. The wealthy got bespoke spells, while poorer folks used generic ones like buying off-brand cereal. Still, everyone wanted a piece of this magic, because who risks eternity on a budget? You're starting to feel the weight of these words, each one a thread in the tapestry of Egypt's afterlife obsession. The spells weren't just for the dead. They comforted the living. You picture a family commissioning a scroll, hoping their loved one's soul would sail smoothly. It's touching, but also a little absurd-like, writing a 200-page manual for a trip you'll never take yourself. The Egyptians didn't care. They wrote anyway, because eternity was worth it. You're hooked now, aren't you? The spells are your map, but the journey's next stop is the judgment. What happens when your heart's on the scales? Let's find out. The torchlight wavers, painting the hieroglyphs with a golden glow as if the spells themselves are stirring. You're leaving the chamber of words behind, but their power clings to you like ink on your fingers. Now, you're stepping into the heart of the afterlife's trial, where your soul faces the ultimate test. Keep moving. The scales of judgment are waiting, and they don't lie. The torchlight wavers, painting the hieroglyphs with a golden glow, as if the spells themselves are stirring. You're leaving the chamber of words behind, but their power clings to you like ink on your fingers. Now, you're stepping into the heart of the afterlife's trial, where your soul faces the ultimate test. Keep moving. The scales of judgment are waiting, and they don't lie. You're about to stand before the gods in the hall of Mot, where your heart is weighed against a single feather, and the verdict decides your eternity. This is no myth, it's the moment medieval Egyptians lived for the climax of their afterlife obsession. Let's step onto the scales and see what it takes to pass. You find yourself in a vast chamber, the air heavy with the scent of lotus and myrrh. Before you stands a golden scale glinting under an unseen light, flanked by Anubis, his jackal eyes sharp, and Thoth, the ibis-headed scribe, ready to jot down your fate. The feather of Mot, goddess of truth, rests on one side of the scale, impossibly light, yet impossibly heavy with meaning. Mainstream history tells us this judgment scene, central to Middle Kingdom beliefs, around 2500 BCE, was depicted in countless tombs and papyri like the Book of the Dead. Your heart, the seed of your soul, is placed on the other side. If it balances, you're headed to paradise. If it's heavier than the feather weighed down by sin, you're dinner for Amit the devourer, with a crocodile's jaws and a lion's claws. You smirk talk about a high-stakes weigh-in. You feel your own heart thump as you imagine it on the scale. The Egyptians believed your heart recorded every deed, every kind word, every shady deal. You picture yourself stammering excuses to Anubis like trying to talk your way out of a speeding ticket. But there's no fooling these gods. The Book of the Dead gave you spells to recite the negative confession, where you'd swear you didn't lie, steal, or kill. I have not caused pain, you'd say, hoping your heart doesn't rat you out. Quirky tidbit, some confessions included denying you'd made anyone weep or been impatient. You chuckle, imagine failing eternity because you cut someone off in traffic. The Egyptians took this seriously, though, because a guilty heart meant annihilation, not just a time out. You glance at Amit, lurking in the shadows like a cosmic guard dog. She's not here to play. She's the ultimate fail state, gobbling souls that don't make the cut. You can almost hear her growl, or maybe that's just your nerves. The judgment wasn't just about morality. It was about order. Mot, the feather's owner, represented cosmic balance, and your heart had to align with it. You wonder what it was like to live knowing every choice could tip those scales. Did people wake up each day thinking, better not yell at the neighbor? Or, Imamit, chow it's intense, like living with a cosmic Fitbit tracking your soul stats. The chamber feels alive, the god's eyes boring into you. You notice Thoth's scroll where he records the verdict. He's not just a scribe. He's the god of wisdom, ensuring the universe stays balanced. You imagine him double-checking his notes like a professor grading a final exam. Historians still argue whether this judgment was a literal belief or a moral metaphor. Did Egyptians really think their hearts would be weighed, or was it a way to enforce good behavior? You're not sure, but the detail in the carvings Anubis' steady hand, the feather's delicate quill, makes it feel real. You can almost taste the fear of standing there, your eternity hanging by a thread. You step closer to the scale, its golden surface reflecting your torchlight. The spells from the last chamber come back to you. Those words were your cheat sheet for this moment. One spell. Chapter 30b from the Book of the Dead begs your heart not to betray you. You imagine your own heart snitching like a bad friend. But the Egyptians planned for that tucking amulets into their mummies to keep their hearts in line. It's clever, but also a little paranoid, like locking your diary so your secrets don't spill. The whole scene feels like a courtroom drama, except the jury is a pantheon, and the penalty is worse than life in prison. It's no life at all. You're starting to get why this moment obsessed them. The judgment wasn't just a test. It was the culmination of everything, every prayer, every spell, every mummified organ. You picture a merchant, a priest, even a child, all living with the scale in the back of their mind. It's not just about being good. It's about being weightless, free of guilt. You joke to yourself, maybe they should have invented therapy instead of mummification. But in a way, this was their therapy system, to make sense of life's chaos, to give death a rule book. You feel a pang of respect for their clarity, even if it came with a side of cosmic terror. The chamber's silence presses against you, broken only by the faint crackle of your torch. You're ready to move on, but the weight of this moment lingers. The scales are the heart of Egypt's afterlife. Dream the point where hope meets truth. You imagine passing the test, your heart balancing perfectly and sailing to the field of reeds. But what was life like when every day was prep for this moment? Let's step out of the underworld and see how the living got ready. The scales fade behind you, their golden glint lingering in your mind like a warning. You're stepping back into the world of the living now, where the sun burns hot and the Nile hums with life. But even here, the afterlife looms, shaping every moment. Keep walking. You're about to see how daily life in medieval Egypt was one long rehearsal for eternity. The scales fade behind you, their golden glint lingering in your mind like a warning. You're stepping back into the world of the living now, where the sun burns hot and the Nile hums with life. But even here, the afterlife looms, shaping every moment. Keep walking. You're about to see how daily life in medieval Egypt was one long rehearsal for eternity. You're standing on the banks of the Nile, the air thick with the scent of mud and barley, surrounded by people who lived, worked, and loved with one eye on the afterlife. Every choice, from the bread you baked to the prayers you whispered, was a step toward passing Anubis' test. Let's dive into this world where life and death were two sides of the same coin. You're in a bustling village, mud brick houses, baking under the Middle Kingdom sun, around 2500 BCE. The Nile sparkles nearby its waters, feeding fields of emmer wheat and flax. You see a farmer pausing to offer a handful of grain to a small shrine, his lips moving in a prayer to Osiris. Mainstream history tells us that daily life in medieval Egypt was steeped in religion. Every action, from planting crops to brewing beer, was tied to the gods and their promise of eternity. The afterlife wasn't a distant dream. It was a to-do list. You notice a woman kneading dough, shaping loaves to leave at her husband's tomb. It's not just food, it's fuel for his ka, ensuring he doesn't go hungry in the field of reeds. You wander through the market, where vendors hawk linen pottery and tiny amulets shaped like scarabs. These trinkets aren't just jewelry. They're spiritual insurance, meant to protect you in life and death. You pick up a clay figurine of Bess, the dwarf-like god who guards against evil spirits. Quirky tidbit: some households kept Bess statues near their beds, believing he'd scare off nightmares and demons. You smirk. Imagine sleeping with a creepy little statue, watching you like a divine nightlight. But it worked for them. Every home had a shrine, a mini tomb where families prayed and left offerings, keeping their ancestors' souls fed. It's like texting your grandma in the afterlife to make sure she's okay. You pause by a group of children playing with wooden boats, mimicking the cosmic journey their parents described. Even kids grew up knowing death wasn't the end. They learned prayers, early recited spells, like you'd memorize multiplication tables. You can almost hear their giggles mixed with chants about sailing past underworld serpents. It's cute but eerie, like kids playing hide and seek with eternity. The whole society was wired this way. Farmers, artisans, even scribes spent their days earning merit for the afterlife. You picture a potter shaping a jar, hoping its perfection would tip Mott's scales. It's exhausting just thinking about it, like living with a cosmic performance review hanging over you. You step into a temple shadow, where priests shave their heads and chant hymns to Ra. These weren't just religious spaces. They were economic hubs, collecting taxes and grain and linen to fund afterlife rituals. You notice a man donating a basket of dates, muttering a prayer for his deceased father. It's not just devotion, it's strategy. The more you gave, the better your family's chances in the underworld. Historians still argue whether this was genuine faith or social pressure. Did people believe in the afterlife, or were they just covering their bases? You're not sure, but the effort feels real. You imagine the stress of keeping up, like trying to impress a boss who's also a god. You sit by the Nile watching boats glide past their sails, catching the breeze. Every part of life here was preparation. Women wove linen for mummy wrappings. Men carved Ushabti statues to serve in the afterlife. Even meals were symbolic. Bread shaped like the sun beer offered to gods before drinking. You grin, imagine toasting Osiris before chugging your brew. But it wasn't all serious. Festivals broke the routine with music, dancing, and feasts that doubled as offerings to the dead. You picture a family laughing, pouring beer on a grave, believing their ancestors were partying along. It's oddly wholesome, like a picnic with ghosts. The sun dips lower, painting the sky gold, and you feel the rhythm of this place. Life wasn't just about survival, it was about legacy. You see a scribe teaching his son to write, passing down spells that would outlive them both. It's humbling, but also a little absurd, like spending your whole life studying for an exam you'll never see graded. You joke to yourself, maybe they should have invented a chill spell for the living. But that was the deal. Every action was a brick in your eternal foundation. You're starting to respect their focus, even if it feels like overkill. The Nile keeps flowing, and so does their obsession, pulling you toward the priests who made it all happen. The sun sets, leaving a crimson glow over the Nile, and you feel the village's pulse slow, as if it's whispering secrets to the stars. You're leaving the daily grind behind, but the afterlife's shadow still looms, cast by the priests who orchestrated this cosmic plan. Keep walking, you're about to meet the masterminds who turned faith into architecture, building bridges to eternity. The sun sets, leaving a crimson glow over the Nile, and you feel the village's pulse slow, as if it's whispering secrets to the stars. You're leaving the daily grind behind, but the afterlife's shadow still looms, cast by the priests who orchestrated this cosmic plan. Keep walking, you're about to meet the masterminds who turned faith into architecture, building bridges to eternity. You're stepping into the sacred precincts of medieval Egypt's temples, where priests weren't just holy men, but engineers of the afterlife crafting rituals that ensured souls reached Osiris' realm. Their chants echo in the air, heavy with incense, and every gesture they make is a thread in the tapestry of immortality. Let's slip into their world and see how they held the keys to forever. You stand before a towering temple gate, its sandstone pillars carved with hieroglyphs that shimmer in the torchlight. The air smells of frankincense, and you hear the low hum of chants, like a lullaby for the gods. Mainstream history tells us that in the Middle Kingdom, around 2500 BCE, priests were the backbone of Egypt's spiritual and economic life, overseeing rituals that linked the living, the dead, and the divine. They weren't just praying, they were running a cosmic machine, ensuring every soul had a shot at the afterlife. You watch a priest, his head shaved, and linen robe pristine, pour wine onto an altar for Osiris. It's not just devotion, it's a job one that kept the universe spinning. You step inside the temples, cool shadows wrapping around you like a cloak. Priests moved through these halls like clockmakers tending to the gears of eternity. They performed daily rituals, washing statues, offering food, chanting spells to keep the gods happy and the afterlife accessible. You notice a stone table piled with bread dates and goose meat, all destined for the gods' invisible appetites. Quirky tidbit: some priests were known to recycle these offerings, eating them after the gods had their spiritual fill. You smirk, imagine snacking on divine leftovers like raiding the fridge after a cosmic potluck. But it wasn't cheating. It was practical, keeping the temple's economy humming. You wander deeper past a chamber where priests prepare mummies, their hands steady as they wrap linen with surgical precision. These guys were more than spiritual guides. They were afterlife architects designing rituals to ensure a soul's safe passage. You picture them reciting spells from the coffin texts, their voices steady, guiding the deceased through underworld gates. It's intense, like directing air traffic for souls. The priests also maintained tombs, ensuring offerings kept flowing to the ka. You imagine them double-checking inventories like cosmic accountants, making sure no one's eternity bounced due to a missing loaf. It's a lot of responsibility mess up, and someone stuck in the underworld's waiting room. The temple feels alive, its walls pulsing with the weight of ritual. You see a priest burning myrrh, the smoke curling upward like a prayer. Every act here was calculated, from the timing of chants to the alignment of altars with the stars. The Egyptians believed the gods demanded precision slip up, and Mot's cosmic order could wobble. You grin, imagine the stress of keeping the universe on schedule. But the priests thrived on it, their authority rooted in their role as gatekeepers to eternity. They weren't just holy. They were powerful, controlling vast estates funded by taxes and offerings. Historians still argue whether their influence came from genuine faith or a knack for social engineering. Did they believe every spell? Or were they playing a long game to keep society in line? You pause by a statue of Anubis, his jackal eyes gleaming. Priests invoked him during mummification, channeling his power to protect the body. You can almost hear their chants, a rhythmic drone that feels like it's holding the tomb together. They also led festivals like the beautiful Feast of the Valley, where families honored the dead with music and food. You picture a priest leading a procession, his voice rising over the crowd, promising the ancestors were watching. It's touching, but also a little theatrical, like staging a Broadway show for ghosts. The priests knew how to sell the afterlife, making it feel as real as the Nile outside. You're starting to get why the Egyptians trusted these guys. Priests weren't just middlemen, they were the glue between life and death. You see a young apprentice learning spells, his eyes wide with awe, and you wonder if he felt the pressure of eternity on his shoulders. The whole system, temples, rituals, offerings, was a machine, and priests were the engineers. You joke to yourself, maybe they deserve those leftover dates for keeping the cosmos in check. But it wasn't all glamour. Priests worked long hours, their lives bound by rules: no meat, no wool, constant purity rituals. It's like being a monk with a side hustle in cosmic logistics. The torchlight softens, and you feel the temple's rhythm, steady as a heartbeat. The priests made the afterlife tangible, turning abstract beliefs into stone spells and smoke. You imagine a family relying on them, hoping their rituals would carry a loved one to paradise. It's a lot to carry, but the priests did it with a grace that feels almost superhuman. You're hooked, now ready to leave the temple's grandeur behind and focus on something smaller, but just as powerful: amulets, the portable armor that shielded souls from the afterlife's dangers. The temple's chants fade as you step back into the night, the Nile's cool breeze brushing your skin. You're leaving the priest's domain, but their work lingers in the air like the echo of a spell. Now, you're about to hold something tiny, yet mighty: amulets, the pocket-sized protectors that carried the weight of eternity. Keep moving. The next chamber holds these charms, and they're more than just trinkets. The temple's chants fade as you step back into the night, the Nile's cool breeze brushing your skin. You're leaving the priest's domain, but their work lingers in the air like the echo of a spell. Now, you're about to hold something tiny, yet mighty: amulets, the pocket-sized protectors that carried the weight of eternity. Keep moving. The next chamber holds these charms, and they're more than just trinkets. You're entering a world where small carvings of scarabs, eyes, and ankhs were medieval Egyptians, secret weapons tucked into mummies' wrappings or worn in life to shield souls from cosmic dangers. These amulets were their portable armor, and you're about to see why they believed a tiny stone could outwit the underworld. You're back inside a tomb, the air thick with the scent of resin and dust, your torch casting a soft glow on a linen-wrapped mummy. You notice a glint, something small tucked between the bandages. It's a scarab amulet, its green faience surface, carved with intricate hieroglyphs. Mainstream history tells us that by the Middle Kingdom, around 2500 BCE, amulets were essential in Egyptian burial practices believed to carry magical powers to protect the dead and the living. You pick up the scarab, its weight surprisingly heavy for something so small. This beetle wasn't just cute, it symbolized rebirth, rolling through the afterlife like the sun across the sky. The Egyptians placed it over the heart, hoping it would charm Anubis during the weighing ceremony. You turn the scarab over, feeling its smooth curves. It's inscribed with a spell from the Book of the Dead, begging the heart not to betray its owner. You can't help but smirk, imagine trusting a bug-shaped rock to keep your soul out of trouble. But the Egyptians did, and they didn't stop at scarabs. You spot other amulets: a tiny ankh for life, a jed pillar for stability, a wedjat eye to ward off evil. Each one was a mini shield charged with magic to fend off underworld threats. Quirky tidbit: some amulets were made of meteorite iron, believed to hold celestial power because they fell from the sky. You chuckle talk about cosmic bling, like wearing a piece of a star to impress Osiris. You wander to a nearby niche where a collection of amulets rests on a stone shelf, each one meticulously crafted. Some were worn in life, hung on necklaces, or sewn into clothes, protecting you from bad vibes or snake bites. Others were made just for death, tucked into mummy wrappings, like a spiritual first aid kit. You picture an artisan carving a tiny lotus amulet, whispering prayers to infuse it with power. It's delicate work, but the stakes were high on wrong symbol, and your soul might face a demon without backup. You imagine the panic of misplacing your favorite amulet, like losing your phone before a big trip, except this trip is forever. The chamber feels intimate now, the amulets glowing faintly in the torchlight. You notice a tie-et knot red as blood tied to Isis's magic. It's said to protect mothers in the afterlife, and you can almost see a woman clutching one during childbirth, hoping it would carry her through death as well. These charms weren't just for the elite farmers, and laborers wore simpler versions often made of clay or wood. Historians still argue whether amulets were purely spiritual or partly psychological, a way to ease fears of the unknown. Did people really believe a stone eye could stop a demon? Or was it like carrying a lucky rabbit's foot, just in case you're not sure? But the care put into each one feels deeply personal. You kneel beside the mummy, noticing how the amulets are layered, some sewn into the linen, others placed over key organs. It's like a treasure map for the soul, each charm marking a step in the journey. The Egyptians believed the afterlife was a gauntlet snake's fire. Even rogue gods could derail you. An amulet was your defense, a tiny spell you could carry. You imagine packing your pockets with magic rocks before a big exam. But it wasn't all serious. Some amulets were shaped like frogs or hippos, tying you to fertility gods like Hecate. It's adorable but practical, like wearing a charm bracelet to ensure your afterlife garden blooms. You step back the torchlight, catching the glint of a wedge-shot eye, its blue glaze sharp against the dimness. These amulets weren't just objects. They were promises tying you to the gods you met in that temple chamber. You remember the priests chanting their voices, weaving spells into existence. Amulets were like those spells made solid, something you could touch when faith felt shaky. You picture a family slipping a scarab into their loved ones, wrappings whispering prayers for safe passage. It's touching, but also a little absurd, like sending someone on a cosmic road trip with a lucky keychain. Yet it worked for them, giving courage to face the unknown. The tomb feels quieter now, as if the amulets are guarding it still. You're starting to see why the Egyptians trusted these tiny charms. They were small enough to hold big enough to carry your hopes. You joke to yourself, maybe you should get a scarab for your next big meeting. It couldn't hurt. But the Egyptians didn't stop at personal protection. Their obsession spilled into public life, into festivals where the dead were celebrated like family. Let's step outside and join the party. The torch dims, and you feel the weight of the amulets in your hand. Their cool surfaces, a reminder of the soul's fragile journey. You're stepping out of the tomb, now back into the warm Egyptian night, where the air buzzes with music and laughter. Keep moving, you're about to join the festivals that brought the living and the dead together, honoring ancestors in a celebration that blurred the line between worlds. The torch dims, and you feel the weight of the amulets in your hand, their cool surfaces a reminder of the soul's fragile journey. You're stepping out of the tomb now, back into the warm Egyptian night, where the air buzzes with music and laughter. Keep moving. You're about to join the festivals that brought the living and the dead together, honoring ancestors in a celebration that blurred the line between worlds. You're in medieval Egypt, around 2100 BCE, where the Nile sparkles under moonlight, and the living throw parties for the dead, believing their spirits are sipping beer and dancing alongside them. These festivals were the heartbeat of the afterlife obsession, turning grief into joy and death into a family reunion. Let's dive into the crowd and feel the pulse of these vibrant celebrations. You're standing on a riverbank, the Nile's water lapping gently at your feet, its surface reflecting torches and stars. The air smells of roasted goose and fresh baked bread, mingling with the sweet tang of lotus flowers. You hear drums and sistrums, their rhythms pulling you toward a procession winding through the village. Mainstream history tells us that festivals like the beautiful Feast of the Valley, held in Thebes during the Middle Kingdom, were massive events where families honored their ancestors with offerings and revelry. You see people carrying baskets of food dates, figs bread, shaped like the sun headed for tombs to feed the ka of their loved ones. It's not just a party, it's a bridge to eternity, ensuring the dead stay connected to the living. You join the crowd, their linen garments swaying as they chant hymns to Osiris. Women toss flower petals, and children clutch tiny boats mimicking the cosmic journey their ancestors are sailing. You can't help but smile. It's like a block party with a spiritual twist, everyone invited dead or alive. Quirky tidbit: some festival goers poured beer directly onto graves, believing the dead could drink it through the earth. You chuckle, imagine spilling your drink on purpose, hoping your great uncle enjoys it in the afterlife. But it wasn't wasteful. It was love, a way to keep family ties unbroken across the veil of death. You follow the procession to a necropolis where tombs glow with torchlight, their false doors open to welcome spirits. Families kneel, offering food and reciting spells, their voices soft but fervent. You notice a woman placing a loaf by her father's tomb, whispering his name to keep it alive. The Egyptians believed a forgotten name meant a lost soul, wandering the underworld like a ghost without Wi-Fi. You picture her practicing this ritual yearly, her hands steady but her heart heavy. It's touching, like leaving flowers at a grave, but with higher stakes eternities on the line. The festival feels alive, a mix of joy and duty, like hosting a family reunion where half the guests are invisible. You pause by a group dancing to a lute's melody, their movements mimicking the gods' journeys. The festival wasn't just about mourning, it was about celebration. People ate, drank, and sang, believing their ancestors joined in. You imagine spirits hovering nearby, toasting with ghostly beer mugs. Historians still argue whether these festivals were purely religious or partly social, glue-binding communities through shared rituals. Did people believe their ancestors were really there? Or was it a way to cope with loss? You're not sure, but the energy here is undeniable: laughter, prayers, and the clink of pottery cups, all woven into a night that feels eternal. You spot a priest leading a chant, his voice rising over the crowd, invoking Anubis to guide the dead. Temples played a big role in these festivals, organizing processions and blessing offerings. You remember those priests from the last chamber, their shaved heads and precise rituals. Here they're showrunners, making sure the festival honors both gods and ancestors. You grin, imagine planning a party where the guest list includes deities and the dearly departed. But it worked. These events strengthened the community, reminding everyone that life and death were part of the same cycle. You see a man pour wine on a tomb, his face calm, like he's sharing a drink with his brother. The night deepens, and the festival's glow feels like a second sun. You wander to a quieter spot where families sit by graves, telling stories of the dead. It's intimate like catching up with old friends, except these friends are in the field of reeds, harvesting eternal crops. You joke to yourself, maybe they should have invented a cosmic Zoom call. But the Egyptians didn't need tech, their festivals were connection enough, blending love, faith, and a touch of showmanship. You're starting to get why these celebrations mattered. They weren't just parties. They were promises keeping the dead alive in memory and magic. Now, let's see how wealth shaped these eternal plans. The festival's music fades as you slip away from the crowd, the Nile's shimmer lingering in your eyes. The torches still burn, but their light now falls on grander tombs, where the elite planned their afterlives with unmatched ambition. Keep walking. You're about to see how social status turned eternity into a luxury reserved for those who could afford the ultimate cosmic upgrade. The festival's music fades as you slip away from the crowd, the Nile's shimmer lingering in your eyes. The torches still burn, but their light now falls on grander tombs, where the elite plan their afterlives with unmatched ambition. Keep walking, you're about to see how social status turned eternity into a luxury reserved for those who could afford the ultimate cosmic upgrade. You're in medieval Egypt around 2500 BCE, where wealth didn't just buy better houses or finer linen, it bought a first-class ticket to the afterlife. The pharaoh's nobles and rich merchants crafted elaborate plans to ensure their souls shone brighter than the stars, while the poor made do with humbler hopes. Let's step into this world of privilege and power, where eternity had a price tag. You're standing before a massive tomb, its entrance flanked by statues of Horus, their falcon eyes glinting in the moonlight. The air smells of polished stone and wealth, a stark contrast to the modest graves you passed earlier. Mainstream history tells us that in the Middle Kingdom, social hierarchy shaped burial practices. Pharaohs and nobles got sprawling complexes in places like the Valley of the Kings, while commoners settled for simple pits or shared tombs. You run your hand along the tombs, carved lintel feeling the weight of its grandeur. This wasn't just a grave. It was a palace for the afterlife packed with treasures to impress Osiris and outshine lesser souls. You step inside the chamber, vast and glittering with gold jewelry chariots, even a gilded bed for the deceased to lounge in eternity. The wealthy didn't just prepare for the afterlife. They curated it like planning a VIP retirement in the field of reeds. You spot a painted chest filled with alabaster jars, each holding perfumes or oils for the Kai. It's excessive like packing designer skincare for a cosmic vacation. Quirky tidbits, some nobles included tiny model estates in their tombs, complete with miniature workers to ensure their afterlife villas ran smoothly. You chuckle, imagine micromanaging your eternal staff with clay figurines. But for the elite, no detail was too small when eternity was at stake. You wander deeper, noticing the walls covered in intricate scenes, banquets, hunts the deceased sailing with gods. These weren't just art. They were status symbols, proof of a life well lived and a soul worth saving. You picture a noble commissioning this tomb, dictating every hieroglyph to flaunt his wealth to the gods. The rich could afford the best embalmers, scribes, and priests, ensuring their mummies were flawless and their spells bespoke. You remember those coffin texts from earlier, packed with incantations to dodge underworld traps? The elite got custom versions, while poorer folks used off-the-shelf spells like buying a generic app instead of a premium subscription. You pause by a sarcophagus, its granite surface inlaid with lapis lazuli. It's a masterpiece, but it makes you think of the farmers back in the village. Their simple burials marked by a few pots and prayers. The contrast is stark wealth bought you a bigger tomb, more amulets, and a better shot at eternity. But even the poor shared the dream, scraping together what they could for a basic mummy or a single scarab. Historians still argue whether this divide caused resentment or unified society under a shared afterlife goal. Did the poor envy the rich's golden tombs, or did they believe Mott's scales judged everyone equally? You're not sure, but the effort everyone put in feels like a collective bet on forever. You notice a pile of Ushabti statues, dozens of them each carved to serve the deceased in the afterlife. The wealthy could afford hundreds, ensuring a full staff for their eternal fields, while a laborer might have one, if any. You grin imagine showing up to paradise with just one intern to do all your work. But it wasn't just about luxury. It was about control. The elite used their wealth to bend the afterlife to their will, stacking the deck with treasures and spells. You picture a pharaoh's tomb hidden deep in the desert, its traps designed to thwart robbers. Spoiler, it didn't always work. Many tombs were looted, leaving only the art to tell their story. You step back the torchlight, catching a golden mask, its eyes staring into eternity. The wealth here is dazzling, but it's also a reminder of the stakes. The rich didn't just want to survive the afterlife, they wanted to dominate it, arriving with an entourage of goods and glory. You joke to yourself it's like upgrading to first class on a flight that never lands. But there's a human side to this. You imagine a noble's family pouring their fortune into this tomb, hoping their father's soul would shine forever. It's love, ambition, and a touch of arrogance, all carved in stone. The chamber feels heavy now, not just with gold, but with expectation. The elite's tombs were their legacy, a way to outlast time itself. You're starting to see how wealth shaped Egypt's afterlife, obsession turning faith into a status symbol. But what drove this need for eternity? Let's step out of this gilded tomb and explore the fears and hopes that fueled it all. The torch flickers, casting shadows across the golden treasures, their gleam fading as you leave the elite's lavish tomb behind. You're stepping back into the night, where the Nile whispers secrets of the heart fears of oblivion, hopes for eternity. Keep moving. You're about to uncover the cosmic dread and mortal dreams that drove medieval Egyptians to obsess over the afterlife. The torch flickers, casting shadows across the golden treasures, their gleam fading as you leave the elite's lavish tomb behind. You're stepping back into the night, where the Nile whispers secrets of the heart fears of oblivion, hopes for eternity. Keep moving, you're about to uncover the cosmic dread and mortal dreams that drove medieval Egyptians to obsess over the afterlife. You're standing on the edge of a village, the air cool with the scent of wet reeds and distant fires, around 2500 BCE. Every mud brick house harbors a family haunted by the same question: what happens when you die? For the Egyptians, the afterlife wasn't just a destination. It was a battleground where fear and hope collided, fueling a culture that lived for what came next. Let's dive into the emotions that made this obsession burn so brightly. You sit by the Nile, its waters glinting under a crescent moon, and you feel the weight of the silence. The Egyptians didn't see death as an end, but as a gauntlet, a journey through a treacherous underworld filled with serpents, fire, and judgmental gods. Mainstream history tells us that by the Middle Kingdom, the afterlife was a core belief, shaping everything from religion to daily routines. You imagine a farmer lying awake, staring at the stars, wondering if his heart will balance Mott's feather. That fear wasn't abstract. It was visceral, like worrying you failed a test you studied for your whole life. You picture him clutching a scarab amulet, the one you held in that tomb, hoping it's enough to fend off Amit's jaws. You notice a woman weaving linen by firelight, her hands steady, but her eyes distant. She's crafting a shroud, maybe for herself, knowing every stitch is a step toward eternity. The fear of oblivion wasn't just about dying. It was about disappearing your name, forgotten your call lost in a cosmic void. You smirk, imagine worrying your soul gets stuck in the underworld's spam folder. But the Egyptians had hope too. They dreamed of the field of reeds, a paradise where crops grew tall and rivers sparkled. You see a child drawing a boat in the dirt, mimicking the celestial journey his parents described. It's sweet but heavy like a kid planning their retirement at age 10. You wander through the village, past a shrine, where a man burns incense, his prayers soft but urgent. The Egyptians feared the chaos of the underworld, but believed they could outsmart it with preparation. Those spells, you read the amulets you touched. They were tools to tame the unknown. Quirky tidbits some believed the dead could haunt the living if their tombs weren't maintained like ghostly roommates demanding rent. You chuckle, imagine getting a spectral complaint for forgetting to leave bread at a grave. But it wasn't just fear driving them. It was hope, a stubborn belief that you could earn eternity with enough effort. You picture a family pooling their savings for a single ushapti, betting on a better afterlife. The night deepens, and you feel the tension in the air like a held breath. The Egyptians lived in a world where gods watched every move, and the stakes were eternal. You see a scribe teaching his son hieroglyphs, each symbol a shield against oblivion. It's not just about survival. It's about legacy, about being remembered. Historians still argue whether this obsession came from fear of annihilation or faith in divine order. Was it dread of Amit's jaws or trust in Osiris, promise that drove them? You're not sure, but you feel it. The pulse of a society that refused to let death win. You imagine whispering a prayer yourself, just to hedge your bets. You pause by a small tomb, its entrance modest, but marked with a carved ankh. The people here didn't just fear the afterlife. They craved it, dreaming of a world where pain and hunger vanished. You picture a mother telling her child about the field of reeds, her voice soft, painting a picture of endless harvests. It's hope in its purest form, like believing in a happy ending you'll never see. You joke to yourself, maybe they should have invented a cosmic Yelp review to confirm it was worth the hype. But the Egyptians didn't need proof. They built their lives around this dream, every action a step toward it. You're starting to get why this obsession ran so deep. Fear and hope were two sides of the same coin, each fueling the other. You see a man carving a lotus flower into a stone symbol of rebirth, his hands steady with purpose. It's not just art. It's defiance, a refusal to let death have the last word. You feel a pang of respect for their audacity, even if it seems like overkill. The Nile keeps flowing, and so does their dream, pulling you toward the art that brought it to life. Let's step back into the tomb to see how they painted eternity. The Nile's whisper fades as you turn back toward the tomb, its entrance looming like a gate to another world. The fear and hope you felt linger, urging you to explore how the Egyptians turned their dreams into art. Keep moving. You're about to gaze at tomb paintings that guided souls through the underworld, every brushstroke a map to eternity. The Nile's whisper fades as you turn back toward the tomb, its entrance looming like a gate to another world. The fear and hope you felt linger, urging you to explore how the Egyptians turned their dreams into art. Keep moving. You're about to gaze at tomb paintings that guided souls through the underworld, every brushstroke a map to eternity. You're back inside a Middle Kingdom tomb around 2500 BCE, where the air smells of ancient pigments and dust, and the walls pulse with vibrant scenes of gods' boats and starry skies. These aren't just decorations, they're cosmic blueprints designed to steer the deceased through the afterlife's trials. Let's walk these painted corridors and see how art became a lifeline to forever. You're standing before a wall awash in color, the torchlight dancing across images of Osiris, enthroned his green skin, glowing like emerald. The paintings are so vivid, you can almost hear the rustle of painted reeds. Mainstream history tells us that Middle Kingdom tomb art, especially in places like Thebes, was a critical part of burial practices, serving as both guide and magic for the soul. You trace a scene of a soul sailing a celestial river, its boat flanked by gods. These images weren't just pretty, they were functional, meant to activate spells, and ensure the deceased reached the field of reeds. You imagine the artist brush in hand, knowing every stroke carried eternal weight. It's like painting a GPS for the afterlife. You move along the wall, noticing a depiction of the heart-weighing ceremony you saw earlier with Anubis and his scales rendered in sharp black and gold. The detail is staggering. Mot's feather quivers, as if it could float off the wall. These paintings were a visual script reminding the soul of its lines in the underworld's drama. You spot a monster, part snake, part lion, lurking in a corner, ready to pounce on an unprepared caw. It's creepy, but you can't help but grin. Imagine decorating your house with your worst nightmares just to stay sharp. The Egyptians did exactly that, using art to map out dangers and solutions like a comic book for surviving eternity. You pause by a scene of the deceased harvesting in the field of reeds, their face serene as they pluck golden wheat. It's not just wishful thinking. It's a promise painted to make paradise real. Quirky tidbits: some tombs included images of daily life, baking, fishing, even dancing, because the Egyptians believed you'd need those skills in the afterlife. You chuckle, imagine eternity with a to-do list that includes master bread making. But it makes sense. The afterlife was a mirror of this world, just better. And these paintings were a vision board for the soul, ensuring it knew what to expect. You picture the deceased glancing at these walls, like checking a travel brochure before a big trip. The chamber feels alive, the paintings glowing with intent. You notice a star-filled ceiling, each dot representing a soul or a god. The Egyptians aligned their tombs with celestial patterns, believing the art connected them to the cosmos. You imagine lying in this tomb, your caw gazing up, guided by these stars to Osiris' realm. It's poetic but practical, like a map app that never loses signal. Historians still argue whether these paintings were purely spiritual or partly propaganda, showcasing the deceased's piety to impress the gods. Did the artists believe their work wielded magic, or were they just following orders? You're not sure, but the care in every line feels like faith made visible. You step closer, the torchlight catching a painted lotus flower, its petals spread like a sunrise. The lotus was a symbol of rebirth, a reminder that death was just a step toward renewal. You remember those amulets. You held tiny versions of these symbols tucked into linen. The paintings amplified their power, turning walls into giant talismans. You grin, imagine decorating your room with posters that could save your soul. But the Egyptians didn't stop at beauty. Some scenes showed spells in action, like the deceased reciting the negative confession to pass Anubis' test. It's like a storyboard for eternity, ensuring the soul nailed its performance. You wander to a corner where a smaller painting shows a family offering food at a tomb echoing the festivals you joined. The art wasn't just for the dead. It comforted the living, promising their loved ones were thriving in paradise. You imagine a widow visiting this tomb, her eyes tracing these scenes, finding peace in their promise. It's touching, but also a little intense, like trusting a painting to guarantee your family's happiness. You joke to yourself, maybe they should have added a no demons guaranteed sticker, but the Egyptians didn't need guarantees. They trusted their art to bridge worlds, turning hope into color and stone. The tomb's silence wraps around you, broken only by the faint crackle of your torch. These paintings weren't just art. They were a lifeline guiding souls through the underworld's chaos. You feel a pang of awe for the artists who poured their skill into eternity, knowing their work might outlast them. You're hooked now, ready to leave these vibrant walls and ponder the bigger question. What did the Egyptians really believe about their afterlife? Let's step into that debate next. The paintings fade as you step away, their colors lingering in your mind, like a dream you can't shake. You're leaving the tomb's vivid walls behind, but their stories pull you toward a deeper question. Keep moving, you're about to explore the scholarly debates over what medieval Egyptians truly believed about their afterlife, where faith and doubt collide in a cosmic mystery. The paintings fade as you step away, their colors lingering in your mind like a dream you can't shake. You're leaving the tomb's vivid walls behind, but their stories pull you toward a deeper question. Keep moving, you're about to explore the scholarly debates over what medieval Egyptians truly believed about their afterlife, where faith and doubt collide in a cosmic mystery. You're standing in the cool night air, the Nile's gentle ripples reflecting starlight around 2500 BCE. The tomb spells and festivals you've seen all point to an obsession with eternity. But did the Egyptians take it literally? Or was it a grand metaphor? Let's wade into the murky waters of belief, where historians still grapple with what drove this culture to live for the afterlife. You're back in the village, the scent of burning myrrh drifting from a nearby shrine. The Egyptians' afterlife obsession feels tangible. Every amulet, every painted boat, every whispered spell was a bet on immortality. But as you sit by a flickering fire, you wonder, did they really believe their hearts would be weighed, or was it all a way to make sense of life's chaos? Mainstream history tells us that by the Middle Kingdom, the afterlife was a cornerstone of Egyptian religion, detailed in texts like the Coffin Texts and early Book of the Dead. You picture a scribe, like the ones you saw, carefully inking spells to guide a soul through the underworld. The precision suggests conviction, but the question lingers, was it faith or fear? You glance at a family praying at a small altar, their voices low as they honor their ancestors. Historians still argue whether the average Egyptian believed in a literal afterlife or saw it as a symbolic framework. Some scholars say the elaborate rituals, mummification, tomb art, those scarab amulets you held point to a deep literal belief in a physical journey through the underworld. Others argue it was a cultural tool, a way to enforce moral behavior and social order. You imagine a farmer muttering prayers to Osiris, not because he's seen the field of reeds, but because it's what everyone does. You smirk. Sounds like going to church to avoid your mom's side eye. You wander past a temple, its pillars casting long shadows. The priests you met were the architects of this belief, their rituals making the afterlife feel real. But did they believe every spell they chanted? Some historians suggest priests were pragmatists using religion to maintain power, their temples funded by offerings like the bread and beer you saw at festivals. Others insist the priest's devotion was genuine, their shaved heads and purity rules, a sign of total commitment. You picture a priest reciting a spell, his voice steady, but his mind wondering if Anubis is really listening. It's a human moment, like doubting your Wi-Fi signal, but still clicking connect. You pause by a tomb, its entrance marked with a carved lotus, that symbol of rebirth you keep seeing. The sheer effort years spent building tombs, crafting amulets, painting cosmic maps suggests a society that believed in something bigger. But there's a quirky tidbit: some Egyptians left letters to the dead on pottery, asking their ancestors to fix problems like bad harvests or family disputes. You chuckle, Imogene sending a complaint to your great-grandma's ghost about your neighbor's loud donkey Morgan. These letters blur the line between literal and symbolic, hinting that the afterlife was both a real place and a way to cope with life's messiness. Did they expect a reply, or was it just catharsis? You sit on a stone bench, the night air cool against your skin. The debate feels alive, like the hum of the Nile. Some scholars point to the consistency of afterlife imagery, those boat scales and gods you saw painted on tomb walls, as proof of a shared literal belief. Every detail from the feather of Mot to Amit's jaws was too specific to be mere metaphor. But others argue it was a psychological safety net, a way to face mortality without despair. You picture a mother teaching her child about the field of reeds, her voice soft with hope. Was she promising paradise or just soothing her own fears? You're not sure, but the question feels as old as the stars above. You notice a man carving a name into a small stela, ensuring his father's memory lives on. The Egyptians believed a forgotten name meant a lost soul, a fear you felt by the Nile's banks. This obsession with legacy suggests a literal belief: if your name survived, so did you. But maybe it was also about control, a way to tame the chaos of death. You grin, imagine stressing over your eternal Yelp rating. The debate isn't just academic, it's human, touching on why we tell stories about what comes next. You feel a pang of connection to these ancient people, their hopes and doubts, mirroring your own late-night musings. The night deepens, and you're starting to see the afterlife as a tapestry of faith, fear, and maybe a touch of showmanship. Whether literal or symbolic, it drove the Egyptians to build, pray, and paint with unmatched passion. You joke to yourself, maybe they should have invented a cosmic FAQ to settle the debate. But they didn't need answers. They had rituals, art, and a stubborn belief in forever. Now let's step back and see how this obsession lives on today. The stars above seem to pulse with the same questions you've been pondering, their light, a faint echo of the Egyptians' eternal dreams. You're leaving the village behind, but the weight of their beliefs follows you, urging you to reflect on their legacy. Keep moving. You're about to explore how medieval Egypt's afterlife obsession still echoes in our modern world, a whisper from the past that refuses to fade. The stars above seem to pulse with the same questions you've been pondering, their light, a faint echo of the Egyptians' eternal dreams. You're leaving the village behind, but the weight of their beliefs follows you, urging you to reflect on their legacy. Keep moving. You're about to explore how medieval Egypt's afterlife obsession still echoes in our modern world, a whisper from the past that refuses to fade. You're standing on the edge of a desert, the Nile, a silver thread in the distance around 2500 BCE, fading into today's world. The tomb spells and festivals you've seen built a blueprint for eternity that still captivates us from museum halls to movie screens. Let's walk through time and see how this ancient dream lives on. You're in the shadow of a crumbling tomb, its hieroglyphs worn but defiant, their stories of Osiris and Anubis still speaking across millennia. Mainstream history tells us that the Middle Kingdom's afterlife beliefs, rooted in texts like the coffin texts and tomb art, influenced not just Egypt, but later cultures, from Greek myths to Christian ideas of judgment. You picture a museum exhibit mummies and scarabs under glass-drawing crowds who marvel at their quest for immortality. It's not just history, it's a mirror reflecting our own fascination with what comes after. You imagine standing in a crowded gallery, the air humming with whispers about the field of reeds, and you feel it. The Egyptians' obsession never really died. You wander through the desert, the sand cool under your feet, and you see echoes of those painted boats and heart-weighing scales in modern stories. Hollywood loves Egypt. Think mummies, rising in blockbuster films, their bandaged arms reaching for eternity. You smirk, those movies get it wrong half the time, but they capture the same awe you felt in that tomb's painted chamber. The idea of a journey through death, guided by spells and gods, still grips us. Quirky tidbit: some modern spiritual movements borrow Egyptian symbols, like the Ankh, as charms for protection or rebirth. You chuckle, imagine wearing a t-shirt with a wedge-shot eye, thinking it'll ward off bad vibes, just like a Middle Kingdom farmer. You pause, the stars above reminding you of those tomb ceilings, their painted constellations guiding souls. The Egyptians' belief in an ordered afterlife with scales and spells resonates in our own quests for meaning. You think of modern religions with their heavens and judgments and see a thread back to Mot's feather. Even science fiction, with its tales of uploading consciousness or colonizing stars, feels like a distant cousin to Egypt's cosmic dreams. You picture a tech bro pitching immortality via AI, and you grin. It's not so different from a pharaoh stacking his tomb with Ushubti. The Egyptians taught us to dream big about forever, even if we swap papyrus for code. You sit on a stone, the desert stretching endlessly before you. The Egyptians' legacy isn't just in artifacts, it's in ideas. Their obsession with name, remember that fear of a forgotten soul, lives on in our monuments, books, even social media profiles. You imagine a scribe seeing your Instagram, nodding approvingly at your attempt to be remembered. Historians still argue whether Egypt's afterlife beliefs were a unique spark or part of a broader human need to defy death. Did they inspire later cultures directly, or do we all just crave the same eternal hope? You're not sure, but you feel the weight of their influence like a shadow cast across centuries. You notice a faint carving in the sand, a lotus flower, that symbol of rebirth you've seen everywhere. It's faded but stubborn, like Egypt's legacy. Museums preserve their mummies, scholars decode their spells, and tourists flock to their pyramids, all chasing that same mystery you've been exploring. You joke to yourself, maybe we're all just trying to pass Anubis test, hoping our hearts aren't too heavy. But there's truth in that the Egyptians gave us a language for wrestling with mortality, a way to face the void, with art, faith, and a touch of defiance. You picture a modern artist sketching a scarab inspired by a museum visit, and you see the cycle continue. The night feels softer now, the stars gentler, as if they're whispering the same promises Osiris made. You're starting to see why Egypt's afterlife obsession endures. It's not just about mummies or gold, it's about hope, the kind that builds tombs and paints stars. You feel a connection to those ancient dreamers, their fears and dreams not so different from your own. As you stand, the desert breeze carries the scent of dust and time, urging you to carry their story forward. Their legacy lives in every question we ask about what comes next, every story we tell to outlast the dark. The desert grows quieter now, the stars softening their glow, as if inviting you to rest. You sit by the Nile's edge, its waters lapping gently, a soothing rhythm that feels like a lullaby from the ancient world. The tombs, the spells, the scales, they all fade into a warm, comforting hum, like the fan you turned on before this journey began. You've walked through medieval Egypt's dreams, felt their fear of oblivion, their hope for eternity, and seen how their obsession still whispers in our world. The air is cool, the night wrapping around you like a soft blanket, and you can almost hear Osiris' voice, calm and steady, promising peace. Let the weight of the journey slip away, like sand through your fingers, and imagine yourself in the field of reeds where worries dissolve into golden light. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and let the stars carry you to sleep, knowing the Egyptians dream lives on eternal and unbroken.